Most people starting a marketing agency today, literally in 2026, are making it way too complicated. They think that they need to learn ads, they need to learn websites, they need to learn funnels, they need to learn AI automations, they need to do content, green beans, potatoes, and tomatoes, and basically every single other platform before they actually ever get their first client. But that's exactly why most people don't start. The truth is basically you don't need anything, okay? You need a simple system. Say it with me, simple. You need to know who you help, what the problem you basically solve is, how to get in front of them, how to sell them, and then how to deliver and how to keep them roughly after that. That's why we built this roughly inside our IBD SMMA accelerator. If you want to start, click the first link in the description. But it's not just a bunch of random videos, okay? It's a step-by-step system to help you start and scale your marketing agency without guessing what to do next from zero. So in this video, I'm basically going to talk to you and walk you through our full system on this Miro board, because I'm going to get on Miro board, and I'm going to show you the exact pieces that we basically focus on, which is essentially your offer, your niche, your outreach, your sales process, your fulfillment, your automations, and how to actually build this into a real business. So let's get into it. First and foremost, before we even get into anything, we gotta figure out what the heck the big picture is, okay? At the highest level, an agency is simple. All you need is just 4 things. And what are those 4 things, you ask, Pedro? I got you, my friend. Is get attention, book calls, close clients, and get them results. That's it. Most people fail because they only build one part of the business. They learn outreach, but they don't know how to sell. They learn ads, but they don't know how an offer works. They get clients, but they don't have fulfillment. Or they basically deliver results, but they don't know how to retain their clients. And inside our system, inside IBD SMMA Accelerator, we want the full machine, not just random tactics, right? Essentially a real agency system. So what does that bring us to? The model. Full stop, my friends. Full stop. So this is what you actually sell. So most agency owners, or at least new agency owners, mess this up because they're trying to sell everything, right? So like, I do websites, I do ads, I do content, I do branding, I do SEO, I do funnels, I do automation, greens, beans, potatoes, and tomatoes. And that sounds impressive to you, but it sounds really confusing to your prospect, especially the business owners, right? A confused prospect doesn't necessarily buy, right? So we have to simplify the model. So what does that exactly look like? Inside IBD SMMA Accelerator, I say that 3 times fast, the goal is to create one clear offer, right? That solves one painful problem. An example would be like, I help coaches book more qualified leads or qualified calls. I help agency owners get their first clients. I help local businesses generate more leads. I help real estate agents turn content and ads into booked appointments. The offer basically needs to be super simple that somebody that is literally a baby could understand it in one freaking sentence, okay? And if they don't know what to do or they don't understand what you do, they're not going to pay for anything. So where does that bring us next? Essentially, the market. Look at this little painting that I found. This is really awesome. I think it's cool. It's appropriate. Anyway, this is essentially who you sell to, right? So most beginners say, I can help any business. I can help any niche. It doesn't matter. This, that, and the third. And that sounds flexible, but it actually makes you look less valuable, which is kind of crazy, right? If you help everybody, nobody feels like you're actually talking to them. So inside the accelerator, we focus on picking one market, right? We literally ask all of our clients to basically pick one market, one niche, and they have to go through an offer approval in order to learn their specific pain points. And this could be coaches, this could be agency owners, this could be real estate agents, this could be roofers, this could be HVAC, this could be home service businesses. It doesn't matter. The point is not to be stuck in one niche forever, right? And the point is to stop switching every single week, right? So you pick a market, you understand the business, their problems, and build your message around what they actually care about, okay? So once you understand the market, what happens next? Well, Pedro, what do I do? You have to generate the message, right? This is essentially what makes people care. So what does that actually look like for agency owners? Because most agency owners basically talk too much about their services. Like, yeah, we run ads, we run funnels, we create content, we use AI, we have systems, but the client doesn't care about the tool. They just care about the results. Make it make sense. So instead of saying, we run ads, say, we help you book more qualified calls without chasing leads all day. Instead of saying, we do content, you could say, we turn your expertise into content that builds trust and builds leads. right? Instead of saying we build automations, we basically say we help you stop losing leads because your follow-up system is too slow. That is the shift, right? It's essentially your message should not be about what you do. It should be about the problem that they have and the result that you solve to get the result they want, if that makes sense. All right, cool. And then what does that lead us to do? Obviously, when we have all this catered away, we want to get into outreach. How do we find everybody? So once you have the offer, the market, and the message, and that's stupid clear, we have to talk about how to find people. And this is essentially where most people start. But it shouldn't be their first step, if that makes sense. Because outreach only works when the foundation is clear. So inside our IBD SMMA accelerator, outreach is not just send random DMs or cold SMS and hope somebody answers, right? It's basically a system. You need a lead list. You need a clear opener, you need a reason for reaching out, you need a simple offer, you need a follow-up process, and you need a way to book the calls, right? Most people, they basically quit after one message, which is kind of crazy in my personal opinion, but the money is usually in the follow-up. So someone might not respond to the first message, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not interested, right? It might mean they were busy, or they might mean that your message got buried under all their messages because people have notifications that's literally thousands of them and they never check their stuff, which is super annoying. It might mean that they need more trust. So we basically teach you how to follow up without sounding desperate. But before that, we literally give you go high level so that way you can actually figure this out for yourself and then booked appointments for yourself. So that way on a consistent basis, you have a calendar that's full. It's simple, direct, and helpful. And that's how you basically start conversations. And the only way that you're going to do that is in one of 4 different ways, which is essentially cold, warm outreach, paid ads, or content. And we literally have systems for everything too. So, and in addition to that, once you figure out an outreach system, then you're going to go into sales. Essentially, this is where a lot of people lose their first client. I'll be mad honest. Not because their offer is bad mainly, but because they don't know how to lead the call, if that makes sense. So like a sales call is not just like basically you pitching your service, right? There's a portion of the call which is basically a pitch, but you don't just pitch your service for like literally 30 minutes straight. A sales call is basically understanding your problem. And then inside the IBD SMMA accelerator, the sales process is super simple. This is literally what we teach every single one of our students. It's build rapport, understand where they are now, find the problem, find the cost of that problem, show them what happens if they fix it, then explain how your offer helps them. And most people, they basically pitch too early, in my personal opinion. They basically start talking about deliverables before they even understand the pain. So then why are you going to do that? And I'm just be honest, the discovery is the sale, right? It's literally at the beginning of the call where you're trying to figure out what the heck is going on with their business and what they're trying to do with their lives. Very simple. If you ask better questions, the prospect will tell you exactly why and what they need help with, right? So then your offer becomes the obvious next step. So then once you understand sales and everything else in between, then you have a client. You finally have fulfillment. Look at all the boxes. You finally have fulfillment. You essentially close a client and then now you basically need to deliver. So this is where a lot of beginners get nervous, right? So they have a client and they basically come to us and they're just like, oh my God, Pedro and Zach, I don't know what to do. Well, you don't need to know everything before signing a client. I'll just be mad honest. Like I literally came into the situation when I had my agency, my short form content agency, where I didn't necessarily know all the nooks and crannies of every single thing that meant closing a client and getting payments from them overall. And you don't need to know everything. Like I'm literally gonna tell you right now, you don't need to know everything. You just need a simple fulfillment system, right? So with all of our students, depending on the offer, fulfillment can look like a bunch of different things, right? Like content creation, ads, lead generation, landing pages, CRM setup, automated follow-ups, booking systems, reporting, client communication, it doesn't matter. The goal is not to make fulfillment complicated. The goal is essentially to solve the problem the client paid you to solve, right? And if they paid for leads, you get them leads. If you get paid for appointments, then you essentially get appointments. If you are essentially getting paid for content, then you create content that builds trust and creates demand. The main thing is the main thing. Remember, keep the main thing the main thing. So then now you're doing fulfillment, you're going to have to develop some sort of automation and systems, right? The only SAT word I'm ever going to say in my life in comparison to Zach is literally systems, okay? And maybe automations, depending on the situation, right? So this is essentially where the business starts to become real because you're essentially getting maybe 2-3 clients every single month. And then roughly from there, it just basically depends on you, right? You essentially set these up or consistently let yourself do every single task manually. But at that point, you don't necessarily own an agency, you own a job, if that makes sense. So we use systems, right? This can include a CRM, like Go High Level. This can be lead tracking with Go High Level. This can be automated follow-ups with Go High Level, if you see where I'm going with this. Or calendars, appointments, reminders, client onboarding, pipelines, reporting, like you already know this stuff. The goal is essentially simple. It's essentially nothing should live in your head, period. If a lead comes in, then there should be a process. You should get a text message letting you know that you got another lead. If a client signs, then there should be an onboarding flow. If the campaign starts, there should be tracking. If their result happens, then the client should see it. Systems create consistency, and consistency creates retention, which then creates trust, right? Overall trust with buying your services, upselling people, and et cetera, right? And after you develop your automation and systems, basically with the systems that we've developed, or via your other methods if you decide to do that, then you develop retention, right? Because once you get a client, that's one thing, right? It's like, but keeping them is what builds the business, right? So most agencies are always basically chasing new clients because they don't know how to retain the ones that they already have, which is kind of crazy, right? Retention essentially comes down to three things, right? Which is essentially communication, results, and reporting. So even if you're getting results, the client needs to know what is happening. So you need to communicate before the actual ask, right? So like you need to show them what's working. You need to explain to them what the numbers mean. You need to make them feel like there is a plan, right? Because imagine if you were in a situation where like you're trying to basically do everything like in a relationship, and all of a sudden like you don't necessarily communicate what you're trying to do in the relationship. Like, are you trying to get married? Are you trying to have all these kids? It's like, and then a year goes by, and then the girl basically doesn't know anything about you, or the guy, depending on what you are or what you're into. But they don't have that communication, so what they're going to do, they're going to leave. And it's the same thing with clients, right? So a client who feels guided is more likely to stay any day of the week. And with all of our students in basically the IBD SMMA Accelerator, we don't just focus on getting clients, we also focus on keeping them. And the main thing is just like making sure that your service is as good as possible and you have all your stuff dialed with your automations and your systems. So that way retention goes up, LTV goes up, and then you make more money in the long run. So the last one is now once you got all that carried away or I guess set up, you essentially get into scaling. Because what? The foundation works. Because that's the only thing you can do after that. Otherwise, you want to keep making the same amount of money. And I don't know about y'all, but I want to be making more money as I grow, right? So if you don't have the foundation in place, you're not going to scale because you can't scale chaos, okay? Your scale is essentially taking what's already working and then doubling down on it. So the order goes, you get a clear offer, you pick your market, you fix your message, you start outreach, you book calls, you close those clients, you deliver results, you build systems, you improve retention, and then increase volume afterward. And that's how you build something real, really. It's not by jumping into a new strategy every single week, not by switching niches every single time it gets hard, not by watching 100 videos from a bunch of different gurus and taking no action. I'm literally giving you the groundwork. All you have to do is just do it. You build by basically doing the simple things long enough for them to compound. If you like this video, I really appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching this. If you guys want all these systems, you can basically hop into our course and our coaching program, which is in the first link in description. Otherwise, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe because we put videos out like this every single day and you don't want to miss them. I will see you guys in the next video. God bless you and peace.